when you're a little kid, you have a sort of a little image of every country. So Wales, that's a country where they have coal mines, and the coal mines fall down on the children, right? And I thought Wales was actually Ireland, but that's another story. But Sweden, it was the Vietnam War. Because the Vietnam War was the biggest issue in America at the time when I was growing up. And the first time I heard about Sweden was really that Sweden was condemning what we were doing in the Vietnam War. So this was something everybody knew. It was very important. And then my parents were psychiatrists, one a psychiatrist, one a psychologist. And so I also was aware that Soviet psychiatrists, that Sweden did not approve of Soviet psychiatrists because they were doing terrible things to people who just politically disagreed with the government, and that Soviet psychiatrists weren't allowed in Sweden. Now, I don't even know if that's really true, but that was my impression as a child. But I think this is an important, it's not an altogether wrong impression. I mean, I'm very glad to be here because of Sweden's reputation in terms of leading human rights causes. In other words, this was not a country that I associated with, it was not a war-waging country, it was something very different. And I wanted to say something about how Sweden's responsibility here, very quickly. You know, one of the points that Harold made was that China does listen, and I think that's true, and I agree with that. I'm not sure that I fully agree with the idea that China changes its actual behavior depending on what it's hearing. It perhaps does not. In general, there's one piece in that film, I didn't make that film, this little 20-minute thing, but it does have one quote which I think is very true. I really did think I was writing history when I was writing my book, The Slaughter. I thought, this is history. There is no way the Chinese can continue to do this. It's too irrational. Yes, it's an $8 to $9 billion industry, but it's also true that they must be aware, they're obviously aware of how this is affecting their reputation in the world. The big money isn't in transplantation, the big money's in pharmaceuticals. That is China's future, that's a pillar industry, that's obviously the direction they want to go, and I still think that's true. But there's another part to this which is perhaps more important than the money or the medical incentives, and that is to destroy China's internal enemies. That originally was the case. We know that it started with the Uyghurs in 1997. Even before Falun Gong, there was any Falun Gong crackdown. It began with the Uyghurs. It began with high-ranking Chinese Communist Party officials coming directly to Urumqi to get organs from the political wing of the Urumqi prison, right? That's where the first blood tests of political prisoners were carried out and done. These high-ranking Communist Party officials, 6 of them received their organs, they left, and they were replaced with another 6. That is how it began. And that was a medical, essentially it had been established that you could do this, and then the question became, what do you do with these massive Falun Gong population? And that was where where you do start to see a massive increase in the transplant establishment. And then in 2002, we get the first cases of house Christians, specifically Eastern Lightning. And then in 2003, the first cases of Tibetans. How do you get rid of a problem like this? Well, the Marxist method traditionally is to simply eliminate people who are a problem and who know something about an issue that you don't want exposed. And that is what I fear is going on. It doesn't matter if Xi Jinping likes Falun Gong or doesn't like Falun Gong. Perhaps he goes into his office and shuts the door and does the exercises. I have no idea. But the bottom line is Xi Jinping needs to remove this problem. And he cannot fully blame it on previous forces, other factions. So I don't know if we can save lives. And I honestly will never know that. But I do know that we can clean our hands. And that if there's any country in the world which is known for this, of telling people we need to clean our hands and we've cleaned our hands and now you need to do it, that is Sweden. There is no question. I mean, this is, you cannot wait. The European Parliament has put through this resolution, the same resolution they just put through. They did it 3 years ago. Now they're doing it again. You will not see movement here. What you will see is if you change your own policy on something as small as just medical confidentiality of patients going to other countries to get organs, if you just change that policy alone, it would ripple through the world, okay? So for that reason, I really am in the right place, and I just wanted to thank you all for coming, and I really look forward to your questions. By the way, if you have skeptical questions, things that you, that's absolutely welcome. The only reason why we're starting to get a big lift-off in the press and with governments and even with, for the first time, human rights groups like Freedom House and so forth, is because people ask those skeptical questions. That's what led to the big change, so thank you very much.